Good morning. So there's something that can have a dramatic impact on employee engagement, productivity, commitment, autonomy, can help you as a manager reduce your workload, and that's delegation. But it's one of those things that's so often done really, really badly in organizations that often ends up doing more harm than good. So we work with really intensely busy managers from all different sectors. We work in finance, tech, clean energy, and what we do when we're working with leaders at all levels, from sort of chief executive down to sort of high potentials, is we give them this delegation process that we're going to share with you. And what it does is they often report that it just has a really significant impact on how their actual employees respond and just improves performance. So we're going to share just a little bit of a tip that we take our people through when we're doing coaching sessions and training sessions with them as well. So the trick to really good delegation, like many things in leadership, if you're really serious about learning your craft and being the best manager that you possibly can be, is preparation. So before you even sit down with your team member, is just sit down and write down in clear and clean language exactly what it is that you're delegating, the task or the responsibility, and also the rationale, why it's important, where it is in terms of the priorities, and what done and good looks like as well. So you just have real clarity before you even sit down and take the person through it. The next thing you need to do is assess the capability and the capacity of the person that you're delegating to. Have they done it before? How well did they do it? How confident are they? Do they have the capacity to even do it at the moment? Do you need to take something off them? Do they have a good enough network within the organization to be able to execute it? Will you have to get involved? All those kind of things. And that helps you grade the task accordingly. The next thing you want to do is think about how much authority you want to delegate to them. So kind of think in the if this then that, so the IFTTT model. So if finance refused to give them a person to help them, then what happens? What's my sign off? How much authority do I have? Do I have a budget? That clarity makes all the difference, so they don't get stuck and you don't become a bottleneck afterwards. And then also decide when and where you're going to do it. So don't shoehorn it in the middle of a one-to-one or something else. It needs its own time, and it needs plenty of time to go through it in detail, because this work up front will save you an infinite amount of time down the track, and particularly if you get involved to put it right if it goes wrong. And also so think about, do I want to do it face to face? Do I want to do it, if I have to do it Zoom, how can we do it so it becomes a much easier way? So when you actually do sit down, so the delegation session itself, you're going to be taking a coaching approach. So many managers are very good at giving advice and telling. This is not one of those times. You really need to think about the questions that you want to create and have a coaching orientation. So really try not to give them the solution. You can seed ideas, but don't give them the solution, and ask questions first, always. Get them thinking for themselves and help them develop their practical judgment. This is part of that person's individual development. So take the time to do this. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take them through your prepared notes. Now, they might get a bit spooked, the fact you're sitting out there with a notepad and you're carefully going through the notes, but it really shows that you're serious. This is a serious thing you're delegating to them. This really matters. I've really put some thought into this. You better pay attention. And that gravity makes people really sort of think through what's happening. So after you've taken them through it, invite questions from them. So clarifications. It might be that they have more information that actually updates your delegation because they're close to it than you are. Once you've done that, then you're going to start really getting them thinking themselves. So ask them what options they're considering. So there'll be a number of ways of actually doing it. So by actually getting them to think of options is actually developing their practical judgment rather than you just telling what they need to do. And then if they struggle, then just say, well, what else are you considering? And don't give up until they've come up with the 2 or 3 options. If they struggle, then seed the idea about potential things they might want to consider. And then the really critical bit is asking them to evaluate the pros and cons of each option. That's really important because it's really getting them to consider the implications. So they're starting to think a little bit more strategically about the task and what the ripple effect might be, how they're actually going to do it as well. And then you can help them make the choice. The next thing to do is ask, what are the challenges for you? So that kind of invites vulnerability, but you really want them to have a realistic assessment of what they're going to find difficult in the task. And it should be a stretch, you're developing that person. So if you've broken down the task like you should have done, you'll be able to sort of see where they might struggle anyway. So you can sort of, if they're struggling to, sort of show their manager, maybe they're not as good as they're telling you that they are, then, be curious and ask questions, but really tease out where they might find it difficult. And therefore that helps you sort of identify what support you'll need to give them. The next thing to do is explain what done good looks like. So many executives in the world have responsibilities that they should have given up a long time ago, but we never know what done looks like, how we hand it over to someone else. So when the task is done, who and how do they hand it over to someone else? Or if it's a responsibility, at what point does it not become their responsibility anymore? And that clarity just means that we're always subtracting things, which is a critical point to an efficient organization. Then you're going to ask, how can I help you in the process? So you're really inviting them to be really specific. So many managers are fearful of being micromanagement, but often they're not micromanaging, they're just putting healthy boundaries down. So by the person being explicit in terms of the support that they need, and then, if you feel that they're just being a little bit kind of loose and they're a bit overly confident, then be explicit. I'd like to meet you every 2 weeks and I'd like us to talk about these particular things with this particular agenda. We can also ask, do you need me to set up any meetings for you? Do you need me to facilitate anything for you? And that helps because you're using your authority and your position to help that person. And so you're creating an environment where it will be successful. See, I'm a little breezy here, so sorry. The next one is what's on your mind. So if you ask that question, then because by now they're thinking, jeepers, like how am I actually going to do this? Like this is going to be hard. So you really start to get those concerns out on the table in advance. Or they might be sort of thinking, so what's the priority here? Again, this is really important that you get this out now rather than further down. And then you ask the question, because you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? Because you want to make it sustainable. People often take on more responsibility. You're the boss, you've got reward and authority over them. And so it's really important that they're clear that they're giving something else up and they're staying focused as well, and help them with that decision. And then finally, because this is an iterative learning process, ask them, how did you find the process? What worked for you? What could we do better next time? Because you're always learning. Now, if you've actually given them a really difficult, complex, big task or responsibility, go back to them 2 or 3 days later and just check in to see if there's any further thoughts. And that will really give them a chance to think, because particularly if they've got a preference for introversion, they'll need some time to sort of digest the facts and do some research. And that allows you to come back and have an even more informed conversation as well. So those are the tips. We regularly share strategies and tactics we share with senior managers on our YouTube channel. So please feel free to subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'll actually put a link into a longer form article that we've written about this, which has a little bit more detail. We hope you find it really useful. And yeah, let us know how it goes when you start to implement it.